It's time for the pastor's chat. So Father Rob, coming from Annunciation of the Lord in Ottawa, Canada. This is kind of, again, a time I come on and just talk about things that are happening in the parish or experiences I've had just recently, or maybe homilies that I'm working on. Tonight it's a little different because I actually got a request. So it's interesting. I put out a little question, said if people want me to talk about something in particular, and someone actually gave me an answer. But so I'll get to that in a second. But I just wanted to finish off the week in review. We had a big weekend, really big weekend. A number of baptisms, and I talked about that in my homily. Actually, 10 baptisms in the last week and a bit. So it's about 10 days. But the real big thing was All Saints and All Souls, and then a cultural thing, which is Halloween, All Hallows Eve, which is on the evening. That's the Friday night before All Saints, and then into All Souls, which is something we usually do here in the parish, where we invite families that have lost loved ones, maybe funerals that we've done, or possibly in other places. We don't really limit it, like just parishioners that have lost people in the year, or even in the past, and we kind of honor them, and we try to kind of model that. So both those events were quite successful. There was the outreach. We had, I think, over 500 kids, which it was a horrible night. It was cold and rainy, and the Jays game, of course, was on. And sorry to all the Jays fans, but we moved it into the church proper, and it was a little bit warmer. I think people came in to warm up. We had hot chocolate and popcorn and I see cotton candy. We kind of upped the game a little bit this year, and it was very well received. So it gave us a chance to connect with or interact with people and families and neighbors that we just don't get to see any other way. And so rather than just letting them walk by, we just invite them in and just interact with them. And little cards we had with our webpage and things on it, like a QR code. And then again, I'm always moved by that when we had the All Souls Day, then that was the Sunday night. A little different this year because we had it on a Sunday. Normally we don't. I think it gets moved usually. And often when we do that, we'd have a special night in which we'd have people back and a particular mass that's offered for that, like at 7:00. But this was actually a Sunday evening mass. It was the one we always have at 6. And again, we invited people to that mass, and it was quite full actually. I was very pleased. We probably had at least 100 of our regulars, and then about 150 people that we invited, and it just filled up nicely the atrium there, the annex. So it was nice. It was very nice. And we light a candle, and people brought pictures of their loved ones, including my mom. My mom, of course, passed away this year, and so just to have her picture there, and to see other people doing the same, and I just talked a bit about baptism and connecting that between all the baptisms we had, and then a funeral that for a woman named Tess Sturgeon. Tess is almost 99 years old when she died. I'd gotten to anoint her just a few days before. And she had been a long-time parishioner, first at St. Gabriel's and then here, but crazy backstory. She's just an amazing lady. So the connection is, in the baptism rite, it actually says, we baptize you into the death of Christ that you might experience the resurrection. And then at a funeral, especially when you have a casket, there's a prayer you say right at the door of the church. It's the same, like with a baptism, it starts at the door of the church. And a funeral, properly, especially if you have a casket, a little different with ashes. But it starts at the door of the church, and you say, on the day of her baptism, Tess was given a promise, and we celebrate the fulfillment of that promise. So it was quite powerful. Yeah, it went off very well. And then the funeral for Tess is tomorrow. So say a prayer for her. It's actually her birthday. It would have been her 99th birthday. So God bless Tess. But the question that was asked to me was about the Screwtape Letters. So this is one of the more popular works from C.S. Lewis, who was in that whole genre with Chesterton and Tolkien and Lewis. Chesterton was a little bit before that. He was writing, but it was a similar idea that they all had was, I think actually it was Chesterton was criticized one time because he wrote in for what was that time considered a bit low. It was magazines. He wrote the Father Brown Mysteries and other things like that. He wrote these articles and short stories. And people say, well, why are you writing? Why don't you, if you're a serious theologian, why aren't you writing theology books? And he said, he had a great answer. He had a lot of charming answers. He said, nobody reads those, but people do read magazines. So it's kind of similar to our outreach at Halloween. You can say, well, why would you do that? You're a Catholic church. Like, why would you be involved in that? Well, almost 1,000 people walk in front of my church every Halloween. Why wouldn't I make an effort to reach out to them and just see if there's a connection? Like, that's where they are that night. That's where we should be. And it was actually a challenge to me. This is relatively recent. One of my staff members was challenging us a few years ago, and it's become quite a thing. So it's a similar idea. So Chesterton was like that, and that was really around just in and around this First World War. And in the Second World War, this is where Lewis and Tolkien got to be friends, and they would talk about this. They had different ideas about it. They called the Inklings. It was kind of a little group that would go to a pub. I'd love to go there in Oxford and just talk about how do you reach a generation that doesn't read theology, that doesn't take these questions too seriously. And again, we go back, the 50s, the 40s, the 30s, that was lots of faith, wasn't there? Well, culturally, yes, but not necessarily, as deep as we would like. And I think the cracks were already starting to appear. It's that whole premise. I think there's sometimes a romanticizing about how things were, and I don't think they were as great as we imagined. Numbers were great. Churches were full. It was still seemingly expanding, but it was expanding on the energy of a different generation that started to fade. And so they were trying to come up with new ways to present it. Chesterton had his magazine articles. Tolkien he didn't like allegory, crude allegory. He wrote Lord of the Rings as sort of almost a theology without a theology. It's like virtue and sacrifice and things like the Eucharist. It's all in there. But even if you're a devout atheist, you can still learn about virtue. It's not obvious. With Lewis, he was more so. The Chronicles of Narnia, the lion is Aslan is clearly a Christ figure. It really couldn't be anything out there. So he was a little more direct in how he did it. Tolkien, not so much, but nonetheless, they're both great minds and both great writers. One of the works that he did, so his Screwtape Letters, Mere Christianity, this is Lewis. He's also on the radio quite a bit too. During the Second World War, he'd often do interviews. So he wasn't against technology, he just had a different approach to it. But he wrote a quirky little book called Screwtape Letters. And I think Hollow is doing this. This is the Hollow challenge, actually, is to read the Screwtape Letters together and go through it. And people are either kind of getting it or not. And you have to have a little bit of an imagination with this. Let me set it up for you. The way, again, Lewis presented this is there's a person being tempted by a junior devil. So he's tempting this man. He's trying to get him off his game. He's trying to get him to give up on God. He's trying to steal his soul. But he's kind of new at the game. And so he's asking advice from his uncle, who's a senior devil. And all you're getting is the uncle's advice how to tempt people. It's all kind of backwards. Now, Lewis is again, he's a very devout Christian. He'd had his conversion. He's in the company of Tolkien, who's a devout Catholic. So it's not that he's playing with the occult or anything like that. He's using kind of a trick to get you to think differently. I remember talking to an artist one time that was doing some work for us, and we had a studio set up, and they were doing the paintings that we were going to have here in the church. And at one point she said, well, maybe I could have a mirror. And I said, well, okay, what's the mirror for? Knowing nothing about this. She said, well, I like to put the mirror on the opposite wall, because sometimes when I'm facing a problem, I look at the mirror image of my painting, and then I see it differently. And then my artist's eye catches exactly what I need to do. And it's obvious in the reverse. Interesting. So what Lewis has done is he's taken the reverse. So what is faith from a temptation perspective, from an evil perspective? And so you get all this kind of advice about, there's one scene, I won't tell, obviously the whole book is a bit hard to kind of put in a simple talk, but one scene I know it's always kind of stuck with me. At a certain point, the person being tempted goes to church. And obviously the junior devil's all upset, like, oh no, he's going to church, we're in big trouble, blah, blah, blah. And it's just so cutting what the senior devil says, oh, no. Oh, my little friend, don't worry so much about this. This is not a big deal. We can use this. When he goes to church, just get him to see that the usher's tie clashes with his suit. Get him to notice that the singing maybe isn't all that it could be, even if it's really good. Just try to see all the mistakes. Get him to hear the errors in the homily, or the kind of the annoying tick or little habits or social actions of the priest or the minister. Get him to focus on those things, the imperfections that he finds in church. But for goodness sakes, do not let him think eternally. As soon as he starts to think eternally, now we really do have a problem. Do you see the genius of it? It's all reversed. So when we go to church, and I would assume most of you who are listening to this would be churchgoers, you go to church. How often are we critical of, the parking space or other people sitting near us, or, the homily's too long, the homily's too short, it's too theological, it's not theological enough. I don't like this music, I don't like that music. Like we often do run with that. And we forget about the Eucharist. We forget that Jesus is present to us. We forget that we're able and free in this country to still gather and do this. In our church, we have 3 priests. It's pretty good. Like a lot of places are struggling to even have a half-time pastor, let alone 3. So it's to see the transcendent beauty of the sacraments, and that the whole genre. This is going back to the artist. We painted a beautiful rendition of Mary at the Annunciation. That's the name of our church. I think we really have done some different things with music, and it is quite beautiful. And when we talk, like I have my own stylist come down a little bit, and Father Dan he does slides. He started using slides a little bit more, and he kind of tells a story. And Father Sebastian he has some theatrical training, and so his homilies, I find, are very well thought out. He has a real articulation in what he does, and so they're all kind of engaging in their own way. Now, maybe one of them is better for you than another. Maybe there are other churches that you like more than ours. Okay, fine, that's great. But hear the proclamation of the gospel. Experience the fellowship of other Christians. See the Eucharistic presence. Mass celebrated with devotion. Okay, some people are more traditional. Some people are maybe more charismatic. It shouldn't be a fight one against the other. It should be all of it a transcendently beautiful experience. And that's kind of what we get here. It's, I have conversations with people say, wow, I come here and I feel at home, or I experience something. I'm just a better person for this. I don't even know why. And that's all good. You see, it's interesting because there's one of the things that Lewis brings up in the letters is that they're trying to research to figure out why God did this, why God would come down on earth and sacrifice himself. The cover story is all about love, but it can't be that. There must be another reason. And again, do you see the cunning of it? It's the reverse. Evil cannot comprehend doing something out of generosity, doing something virtuous, doing something for nothing, the free gift of salvation that Christ earned for us at the price of the cross. They just can't figure that out. And I think sometimes we either forget it or we don't figure it out. We still want to earn it. We still want to control it. We still want to kind of compartmentalize it, and not to truly experience the love of God in the resurrection or to share it with others. Interesting. So my friends, I don't know if you're doing the Hallow Challenge. It's been on for a while now. I think it's actually maybe finished, but it's still there. I'm sure you can still access it. If it's a book you want to pick up, it's not very long. It's nice, I find, for prayer times because they're short little chapters and you can read one a day. And just to ponder, I did it during Lent one time, I think. I don't know if it's even 40 pages. But you would get a little taste of it. And remember, it's like looking in a mirror. You have to flip everything to really see what he's saying. He's not promoting, sort of temptation or that. He talks about the enemy. Well, the enemy's God. Like, well, for them it is, but not for us. So we look at it kind of in a mirror and go, oh, yeah. So why do I think about that? And why am I always so negative? And why has that one little tick become so annoying to me? When in reality, it's really not that big a deal. Or maybe another way of saying, I've used this too much sometimes, but the main thing about the main thing is keeping the main thing, right? So that whole notion of keeping focused on Christ and keeping him the center of all. So there we are. So that's my thought for the night. So C.S. Lewis, anything from Lewis is good. Tolkien would be great. Chesterton is his own level of genius. Those are all great minds. But they all were of a generation that I think knew and experienced God in a different way. And I think we can get that again. I think we can still find a piece of that and catch it. So Mary Frances, very good to hear from you. It's just a little message you put in there. Good points again this evening. So God bless. Mary Frances is an old friend from out east. So it's nice to hear and that we can still connect through the internet. Again, so screw tip letters this week. I could take on some other things next week. You want to talk about sailing and Lord of the Rings forever. But what do you think? Just put something in the notes, or just chime in, and we'll see if I can't touch on it. I'll try to look at them later. Until then, may the good Lord continue to watch over you. May the saints and angels intercede for you. May our Blessed Mother wrap you in the mantle of her peace. May only God keep you and bless you in the name of the Father and the Son and the Holy Spirit. Amen. God bless you and have a good night.